I will never do another trial without having Ilya prep my witnesses.
Tanveer Shah is the founder of Viper Law Group.
I have already had her prep in other cases that we went to trial on and we won. It was a motor vehicle collision case, which is much smaller in damages. From a pragmatic and also a business standpoint, I won't do another trial without that prep, because I have never been able to do that on my own.
The process of witness prep, I think, is very underutilized by most attorneys. You know, they just assume I have a good client, she's going to be fine, or, you know, I'm going to give her some direction and, you know, she'll be able to navigate, or I'm going to, you know, go over the medical records with him or her. And I was hoping I could bring on Tanveer, because we had a really remarkable session while working with his client in the Jarman case. I was brought on to structure and do some witness prep on the case. When I prep witnesses, I like to have the attorney who's going to be doing the direct sit in so they can observe. They can kind of see how we mine for stories, what we decide we're going to tell, and then how you chose those, and then we're able to use them at trial.
Our client, the plaintiff, he was kind of macho, pride-filled, kind of a biker guy who was a master electrician and kind of had that chip on his shoulder in terms of kind of presenting the story, the human side of the story, as opposed to the bad faith side of the story, as opposed to the medical side of the story, but the actual human, the human import of what this case is all about. What you were able to do was help me learn about my client, his long-term fiance, and his best friend in a way that I was unable to do on my own. And as plaintiff's attorneys, you know, you always walk in thinking, okay, well, what's the liability? What's the, you know, damages? But then what's Exhibit A, the plaintiff? And we all, I think, typically tend to do a pretty good job of getting to know the client, understanding them, so that we can assess the case, because that's the nature of our business.
Sure.
But I think that there is a nuance that is different, or a limitation that we have, that we can't get deeper than that because we're all busy. We have too many cases. I did go to these clients' homes. I did spend time with them. I did see the environment that they lived in. And in Arizona, it was several hours away to drive there. So bringing you in to sit down with this gentleman who was so uncomfortable sharing his feelings, that the thought of him even contemplating therapy, even though the poor guy needed it because of his condition and how this insurance company totally betrayed him in his time of need. You have such a deft touch and skill with these witnesses. The questions that were profoundly deep and intimate, I was unable to, ill-equipped to, and uncomfortable asking those sorts of questions. That when you came to my office and helped break down those barriers, we were able to get these vignettes, stories that you elicited from their past, when times were good, when times were pleasant, memories that they had stored away that had almost been eradicated by the devastating nature of the injuries and the life that they live in reality with now. I remember when you got to talking to Greg about the day he bought his motorcycle in 2007 and what that meant to him. It was independence. He was able to ride this motorcycle. He was able to buy it with the money that he had earned because he was progressively kind of advancing in his economic position to provide for his family and his son. I remember when you got to talk to him about his fiance's son, Anthony, and how he did have his own children, but the relationship with those children was strained, for lack of a better word, and that this was his chance to, quote, learn up his son by doing all the things that he wished he could have done with his biological children, with Anthony. And you were able to pull out these things that we could go back in time when things were good in their life, that a jury could relate with, and then be able to juxtapose them and contrast them with the stark, brutal, savage reality of what was now lost, stolen from him, right? Simple things like in the neighborhood, him cooking chili was like a hot commodity, and that was a big deal. And now he couldn't even cook because he has claw hands. He can't get the ingredients. He said every day he woke up thinking, quote, please don't go wrong today, end quote. I mean, that's just a devastating place for a man or a woman to be in, but particularly when you are the person who takes care of his family, who's trying to learn up his son, who's trying to protect his family, that he literally had to ponder about what is he going to do today to not hurt himself. And he never got to those places with me. But he got to those places with you at your prompting and at your urging because you were able to prep the witness, create that rapport, and then you were able to provide me with certain things that I never had. He said to me when he would climb up, because he was the badass, the master electrician, everybody looked up to him to go to the crazy places. He's like, I don't know why these Walmarts or Sam Clubs or pro stadiums put light bulbs in the places that they do. But I'm the guy that's got to climb up there into God's space and put those up there. One day during the trial, Greg left our lunch and he sat on the corner and he watched a guy changing the light on top of the flagpole at the federal courthouse in Phoenix, Arizona. And I came out and I asked him, I was like, Greg, what are you doing? And he's like, you see that guy? He's like, I've been that guy. And he's like, you know what he's feeling right now? He's feeling the burn in his forearms because he's got to hold himself up there while he's doing that. You had prepped me with all of these things about what he did. But when I got up on direct, I asked him because I know the jurors saw that guy on the flagpole because it was something we all saw. All the attorneys saw when we walked in and everything like that. But your witness prep got him to share these things with me. And our rapport grew even greater than it already was. And I asked him, I was like, do you remember when we were at lunch? Yeah. And do you remember when you were sitting outside? What were you doing? And he told the courtroom, I was looking at that guy. I remember what that felt like to have an honest day's work and to feel that burn. I can't do that anymore. You had actually prepped us to talk about God's space. You had talked about the places that he had gotten. And I was able to use that example that jurors after the trial told me, we saw that guy up there too. And it was kind of like this interesting thing. I've never had that happen in trial before. In doing all of that prep, the front loading, the heavy work, the hour, I mean, it was like 3 days. I don't even remember how many. We were able to distill all of that prep down into, I think, 20 minutes. And I was able to do that because you were able to prep and get the vignettes, being able to give him that moment to talk about in such a short span was really, really, really powerful. And it also didn't allow him to get off the rails because we were so easily able to pick those vignettes that you had prepped him with, but then to get him to start talking about it and answering those questions without me really asking any. And that was huge. That was the beauty of the witness prep, was to be able to get all those vignettes and allow the witness to see those pictures in their mind and go there and be able to tell those stories because they're theirs. They are authentic because they came from them. And that's the beauty of how you were able to prep them in order to give us the opportunity to kind of elicit those in a very difficult environment, on the witness stand. What you did with Greg and the other witnesses was have them withstand pressure of being uncomfortable answering those questions in prep over the time of the intense 3 days that we put together, so that he was really comfortable and knowing exactly where we were going to go when posited that question. It was really kind of a very well woven together dialogue, because by then the rapport that we natively had was just exponentially increased through your prep to where it was just it flowed. So it was so easy.
Ilya, can you talk to us about what a vignette is? How do you use them? And then if Tanveer can kind of go into how that changed from the way he used to do direct to how he does it now, and then I'll get out of the way.
But a vignette belongs in what we call segment 4 of the opening statement. They are the scenes that we access to depict events in the story, events in the case, or events in our client's life. So rather than saying, for example, that our client was very religious, she attended church services every Sunday, she volunteered at this group, what we do is we extract events. We speak to the client about specific instances. Will tell us about the volunteer bakery. When was that? You know, how long were you there? Oh, you know, what did you wear? How long did you stay? What did you bake? And so we get the details of the story. So rather than describing and giving a list that our client may have been athletic, you know, he worked out every day, he, you know, belonged to this gym or that gym, we say every morning at 4 a.m. he gets up and he goes to the beach and he has a 2-mile swim, and then he comes back and he pours himself a, you know, granola and has that while he changes into his bike outfit, and then he gets on his bike and he rides to work. You know, so we paint the pictures of who our client is. So we pull out that vignette, and then we usually storyboard. So we'll create some kind of storyboard that has titles. So for instance, in the examples that Tanveer gave us, it might be, the titles might be, you know, God Space, it might be Journeyman, it might be Motorcycle, whatever that vignette is. And then we work on the process of editing with the client.
One of the profound things in our case was Greg spending time in his garage. He went there before all of these things happened to him because of the insurance company's conduct, to basically work on his garage, have the smells, and kind of, you know, work on his car, work on his motorcycle, and all those sorts of things. And now he spends time in that garage because he's depressed. And that is the one place that he can go and actually hope. And even though he's on pain medications and he spends time in there, that place has become very different for him. The idea that it was like a Zen place for him that's been turned on its head and now is kind of this place that he goes but kind of feels this despair and why he hasn't sold his motorcycle yet. All of these things are ways that our direct examinations have changed, because we would have never gotten to those vignettes by asking a lot of the rudimentary questions that we would to try to tell us more about that. What do you think? Well, because of that prep and how it's intensely siloed, we are able to really get these people, these witnesses, these profound testimonies to talk about what we need in a much more clean, authentic way than if we just ask questions. And I remember being kind of struck by a lot of the things that I was doing before I did these witness preps in the direct. They were kind of not, they were a little more disjointed. There was a lot more prompting that had to happen. And here I find that there's a much more cohesive sort of dialogue. For example, and this is the last thing I'll tell you about this. Because of the witness prep that Ilya was able to help with, I learned that the most terrifying place for my client in his own home was his bathroom every morning. When I asked that one question about your morning routine, and it instantly goes from the terrifying nature of thoughts that go through his head that if I fall in here again, I am going to suffer even more damage to my life. And that's where, by the way, the thought that Ilya's preparation teased out was, please don't let anything go wrong today, started in the bathroom. And so to answer your question, Chuck, I would have never thought of even having directs get to those places, because they never were revealed to me. I never did. I don't have the skills that Ilya does to try to get those witnesses to say that. But when you do, it fundamentally changes the arc of your direct. And that's also how you can really consolidate and get that, you know, really impactful short punch.
The fascinating thing to me is everything you're saying is that you got to places you would have never gotten to before in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just so much, you just said it's so compact. And before I started this trial structure witness prep, in the kind of the beginning of my career, I always got the sense that when I had a witness or a client, or I saw another client babble on and on and on, and they always wanted to tell the reasons for why they wanted to do things and just explain and explain, it was because they didn't trust us. They didn't trust their lawyer. Can you talk about, did you notice a difference from Ilya's prep and from the way that you did direct in the trust, both from the client to you and from between you and the client?
Something that I've thought about with witness prep and trial structure in general, all attorneys have their native sets of skills. And whatever they are, you know, we've won cases before, I've lost cases before. At the end of the day, the programs that we are able to use, and I was a little bit of a skeptic, but I've also been kind of dabbling in a lot of these different programs. But the more things that you are able to do that have witness prep and trial structure involved, it's kind of like if you have this garden and you know you're going to naturally bear fruit and you're going to have flowers and you're going to have vegetables. But if you actually pour some Miracle Grow on there, you know, you're going to have much more bounty. And my mom, who has the green thumb, will tell you that. I've always thought that I had a really good relationship with my clients. I've always, you know, taken a lot of time, given them my cell phone and, you know, the whole thing. And I've always thought that that was my strength, was my people skills, sizing up the plaintiff. What was really profound to watch Ilya work with my clients, who, and I've known her from before, but to watch her work with my clients in this capacity, was that my clients did trust me even more. They even had a greater trust than they did before, because the breakthroughs that she made were, in a way, my clients giving her that opportunity because we had a good relationship, but then trusting her and trusting me that this is for the benefit of what we need to tell the jury. That the clients were able to tell me they appreciated so much of what we did, and even the discomfort they experienced with Ilya and the resistance that there was initially. But once that resistance was passed through, even my, you know, my biker client, who, you know, prided himself as being tough as nails before all this happened to him, was really grateful that he could express that to us, but also to the jury. And I think, to your point, Chuck, that trust, it was just amplified. And that's what the witness prep did for me, in addition to I think, frankly, introducing the humanity into this case in a way that was really dramatic and powerful.
In the courtroom, as you are exploring these events, these vignettes, did the jury kind of disappear and it was just a conversation between you and your client?
Yes. Well, let me answer that in a slightly different way. I've mostly, when we do a lot of our trials, I've done a lot of the witness prep before we had Ilya and trial structure folks come in and do that. And I've always been very careful about, you know, my position in the courtroom, not being a distraction, and all these different things, you know, from the social side of things, the physical side of things. I had a moment in this trial that, and I don't think I've ever told anybody this, by the way, when I was doing the direct with my plaintiff, Mr. Jarman, until you said, did the jury just disappear, I never really thought about that, because I never looked at the jury once. I never did that. I've never done that in any other trial either, by the way, but I literally just talked to Greg. And I talked to Greg for 20 minutes and I didn't even look at the jurors. And I will tell you that my staff and other people told me that there were jurors that were in tears, but I never once saw it. And I never once saw it and looked at them because I wanted to stay engaged in that moment in real time. It was really fascinating to see the trial preparation and the work that we had done unfold, because I had never seen anything like it before. And I have had some amazing experiences in trial, but I've never felt anything quite like that, where this was succinct and it was powerful, it was impactful, and it was short. I've never had a witness on the stand that long, or that short, I should say. Nobody, whether it's a, you know, even just a random fact witness, never. And this is the linchpin to our entire damages case, is here. and I had him on the least amount of time, and there was nobody in that courtroom. It was just me and him.
I've seen Lerma do magic with our clients and our witnesses. And you know, I don't lavish praise very often. Lerma is special, and is the ability to put it in perspective. I always say life happens in spaces, and what you experienced is a space where you provided for that person the absolute empathetic, and you experience opening a place for your client to be heard by the entire community of that jury. And it happened thanks to Lerma's magic.
This show should have been called "Watch Ilya's Head Explode." Like the transformation. These are good lawyers with good cases, and that I get to touch them, that I get to give their case a little bit better of a chance of success because I can clear, you know, emotional content out of the way, or I can get their client to appear, you know, as more authentic in their more authentic state. Like that's a high I can't explain. Nothing in my practice gives me greater joy than that. So it truly is my pleasure. I love it. But okay, we have to stop now because yeah.